First step is going to be to break the Allen bolt. It's a pinch bolt for the axle out. You're going to need a big bar to do that. It's very tight. Once it's loose, just spin it out the rest of the way. You'll discard this bolt. The new bearing will have this bolt in it. Now we're going to remove the brake caliper. There are two bolts that hold the brake caliper on, one up here, one right down here. It's a 13mm head here, and you'll need to stop the caliper slide from moving with a 15mm open end wrench here. Take our wrenches, break it loose. Once they're loose, they usually spin out pretty easy. Same thing on the bottom. Now that both the caliper bolts are out, we're going to pry the caliper away. Grab it down here and up here, wiggle. That'll get the caliper off and out of the way. Push it back on the control arm a little bit. Hook the hose over the nut. Then you got room to work. These are your brake pads right here. The pads are worn, sometimes a little hard to get off. So we'll have to go grab a screwdriver and pry them out of there. Now we're going to pry the brake pads out of the carrier, away from the rotor. It's a good idea to look at both pads together. Make sure they're roughly the same thickness. If they're not, you probably have a seized caliper slide. No matter what, you want to check the caliper slides. That's these parts right here. Make sure they move in and out. If they move in and out well, they're not seized, then you're okay with caliper slides. Next, we're going to remove the caliper carrier. There's two bolts that hold the caliper carrier on. One here and one here. These are usually very tight. Now that we've taken the bolts out of the carrier, we pull the carrier off, pull the rotor off, and we've got our brakes disassembled. The first step towards removing the rear wheel bearing is to take the hub off. This hub is the part that the wheel bolts to. Different kinds of on-the-car pullers. I use an OTC, some people use a Hub Shark. They have different methods for removing this. I use just a slide hammer with an adapter on the end that bolts onto the flange here to pull it off. This job requires a lot of force. There's going to be a lot of banging on things and a lot of hard pulling. Don't be afraid to beat on these parts. The bearing is going to come out in pieces. This is the inner race right here. We're going to have to get this off the hub. Depending on what type of puller you're using, they'll have special tools inside of them to do that. Read the instructions for your type of puller. It'll tell you exactly how to pull this off. Now we're going to take the dust shield off. There's 3 bolts for the dust shield, 10mm heads. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to take the upper control arm bolt out. These bolts are pinch bolts, but they're not like the front ones. They come out pretty easy. Break it loose, take the nut off first. a large washer. The large washer faces with the cupped side facing forward. That's the side that has the Audi symbol and the part numbers on it. To get the bolt out, wiggle the control arm a little bit. Take the bolt out. We're all set there. Next, we're going to grab the upright here, pull it out. This will give us enough room to get the axle out. And we'll set the axle up here. That way the axle's out of the way. We're not worried about pinching the CV boot. Now we can get our hub tool in here and start pressing this bearing out. I've assembled my hub tool on the hub here. Again, depending on what kind of tool you use, it's going to be different. Read the instructions in the tool. It'll tell you what fittings to use. But essentially, you're going to have a big tube that's going to be larger than the bearing. As we pull the bearing out, it's going to go inside of this. On the back side, we're going to have a small round piece that's just under the size of the bearing. There's a lip inside that holds the bearing in place, so you got to make sure you're not on the lip. What the toolbox might not tell you, have a big hammer as you're hitting it with the impact, or you can try and use a hand wrench to do it. If you tap on that part of the hub about that hard, you don't have to slam on it. It'll help loosen everything up. It's going to take a while to do this. Don't be surprised if it's 10 or 15 minutes of hitting it with an impact, hitting it with a hammer. It's going to take a while. Just keep right on going. As long as the socket's turning, then you're moving it. Finally got the bearing out. Took about 45 minutes to do. This bearing, when it goes back in, if you look inside the bearing here, you'll see that it has two races on the inside. One has a larger inner diameter than the other. You need to put the one with a small inner diameter in. The larger inner diameter goes out. Set the bearing in, then we'll assemble our hub shark and we'll press it in. Now that the bearing is pressed all the way into the housing, we'll use the tool to press the hub into the bearing. Make sure the arbor on the back side is small enough to just catch the inner race on the back. It's on, all done. Okay, once the hub is in, spin it just to make sure it spins. It'll be tight, but it won't feel notchy at all. Pull the upright out. You're going to slide the axle down into place. It helps to spin the hub a little bit. Wiggle them together. Don't pull out on the axle. If you pull out on the axle too much, you'll remove the CV. Push everything in and get your bolt ready. That goes into the upper control arm. Wiggle these together. Bolt through. Beveled washer and nut, and you're all set on the upper control arm. Make sure you tighten it down. Now we're going to put the dust shield on, slide it in place. There's 3 bolts that hold it on, 10mm head, one on the very top. Sometimes you got to wiggle it around to get them started. One right here, one on the bottom here. Once you have all 3 of them in there and started, you can come back with a wrench and tighten them up. Okay, now we're going to put the brakes back on. If you're put new rotors on the car, clean them off. I use a brake cleaner. The rotors are packed in grease, and if you don't clean them off, it'll make it take the car longer to stop and you'll have less brake life. We talked earlier about the slides. These slides are good. I've cleaned them and lubed them. If you need to, pull the slide out. It'll pop the rubber boot off. You can clean any crud that's in there out, put some grease in, put it back together. Not too much grease. You don't want it to squeeze out and get over the rotors. The two Allen bolts that we took out from the inside before, we're going to put back in. So we'll slide our carrier up over the rotor, stick our bolts in from the rear, tighten them down, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, before we put the pads in, we need to compress the piston and the caliper to make room for the pads. Like any caliper that has a parking brake, this caliper needs to be spun as it's compressed. We use a tool to do that. The tool slides in, has two little notches on it that fit into the caliper. And then we use a wrench to apply pressure. Once we've got some pressure on it, we can start spinning the handle, and that'll push the caliper piston all the way in. Okay, now we're ready to put the brake pads on. The brake pads contact the carrier here and here. You want to clean these areas up. A little light dab of grease right there isn't a bad idea. As long as they're cleaned up, the pads will move okay and it's not necessary. Same thing in both the front and the back. Pads just slide on. Then we're going to take the caliper, push it down, push the pins in so the caliper has room. And I usually start with the top bolt first, just get it started. And then once the top bolt is started, we're going to get the bottom bolt started, then tighten them up. That's the end of the brake job. Okay, last step for the wheel bearing. You're going to have a new bolt in the end for the axle. Either have someone hold the brake for you or put the car back down on the ground. Bring this axle in, tighten it to spec. Look at the service manual for your vehicle because some are different. Once we get that tight, we're all set. Wheel bearing's done, brakes are done. Go for a road test. Make sure you have no noises. Enjoy!